Hit it.
Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we'll go from Earth 616 to the Mojoverse to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance
Assemble.
Assemble, Volume 184. And Brent, we now can finally talk about Loki Season 2. It has begun.
Yes, it has. It's, season one was my favorite of the Disney Plus shows, right? Like I've got it and then WandaVision. I know so many people have WandaVision above it. That's fine. That's great. I respect it. But for me, it's Loki number one. So I've been very, very excited about this. And, back before Disney Plus started and like they had just announced, like, we're getting all these different shows, Falcon and Winter Soldier was absolutely the one I was the most anticipating back then. Loki was in the category of like, yeah, I'm always excited for the next Marvel thing, but I don't know if I really feel like I need that project, right? Like, sure, I'll definitely check it out. I look forward to it. I don't know if I need it. Man, I needed Loki season 2. I was like, at this point, after season 1, I'm like, I needed Loki season 2.
Yeah, it was a very nice one. Hey, we could actually, it's our first Marvel show. We can actually watch, at a decent time for all our overseas listeners. Sorry, it's just been, we get what you all
Right.
had at that point, but it's nice to actually have like 2 Disney Plus shows with Ahsoka and this one that we can actually watch at a decent time and not try to fit it in before work.
Yeah, realistically, most of the rest of the run of Loki, I will start watching. It's available at 8:30 or 8 o'clock my time. I'll probably be watching by 8:30 most nights. But I love it. I was getting up at 4 in the morning to watch these before work. Maybe 4:30, and I would. Don't get me wrong, I'd still do it.
He would.
But I'm not exactly upset that I don't have to. You know what I mean? Like I'm like,
get it.
Great. So I'm glad. I am glad that it's Thursday at 8 o'clock and not just Thursday morning.
Yes. And Brent's 8 o'clock. A lot of us are on the East Coast. Brent's 1 hour behind us. So
yeah, I'm in the Central Time Zone. You're in like the main one. I get it. At least the main one for the U.S.
yeah.
But at least you're not in that crazy whatever time zone Heinz is in. That 2.5. He's 2.5 hours in front of me. I don't get that one. That whole half hour. That's a Canadian thing.
It's a Canadian thing.
But regardless, yes, Loki season 2. It is here. It has started, and I have questions, Chris. I have questions. I don't have a lot of answers, but I have questions.
Yes, I have questions. I might even have a factor of fiction for later today, but I haven't decided if I'm doing it this week or next time. So we'll have to see. But how's your week been?
Pretty good overall. Nothing too exciting. Which is fine. It's just how I like it. Let's be honest. I'm fine with that. So, what about you?
Week's been good. Week's been interesting.
Yeah.
Brent's gonna make me want to say it. If you haven't seen it on, I posted. I had gotten a very big surprise at my faculty meeting this week. I was surprised by a whole bunch of cabinet officials coming to the faculty meeting and announcing that I was named the assistant principal of the year for our county. So that was,
which is awesome and fantastic. Let's be real here.
It is awesome. I'm a humble guy. It's one of those things that it's one thing for, it's like the whole county. So it's just like, I don't even know how to react outside of I'm shocked, I'm surprised, I'm humbled. I really, really am. As I said, when I, got a moment to get my composure after I see my kids and my wife come out after, it's surprising, getting my composure from that. But it's just like, I said it there and I'll say it here. I don't get that, any kind of award like that without my staff and everyone at my school. That's a whole testament to them.
You said it's for your county, so I got to ask: Is your county equivalent of your school district, or is there different districts in your same county?
Nope. It's because
it's different everywhere depending on the size of the town. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted a little bit of context. So perfect. Yeah. Well, that is a remarkable achievement, and definitely a feather in your cap. If you were wearing a cap, it'd be a feather in it.
It is.
You should absolutely be very, very proud.
No, I am. It's like I said, I'm still coming down from it all. The amount of messages from friends, family, mentors, former colleagues. At that point, it is. it has been like I said, a very humbling moment, and it is something that I won't forget. And it, the fact that it occurred on my dad's birthday, and my dad had passed away over, almost over 12, 13 years ago. It was just a very appropriate day for it to happen. So I'm very honored, and this is a moment obviously I won't forget. But it was just it. I don't know how you top it the rest of the week.
Well, you top it with Loki season 2.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that'll even come close.
Oh,
to
that was just the highlight of my week.
That was the highlight of your
my
week.
was born.
So, but yeah, so for those of you who reached out, thank you so much. Like I said, it's very, very, very cool thing, and like I said, humbled, and like you said, very proud, and I'm just proud that it recognizes my school as well. So that's the biggest thing I can say is it's a feather in the cap for our school. So
Absolutely.
But all right, well, before we even talk about Loki, we've got paperwork, Brent. We've got all the network paperwork. So let's get this underway because I know you're itching to talk about Loki. So
Got questions.
And we got questions and you got thoughts. So let us get the show notes out of the way. We are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network with 7 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUAPod Network so you know when all the shows can drop. We also have a Patreon if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way. We've got 2 tiers. We've got our dollar tiers, our tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job? And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon exclusive shows, including our show We Can Watch This All Day, the Marvel Alliance MCU Rewatch. We've got 21 episodes up there. Our most recent one, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I believe we got 2 weeks till we record Infinity War, if I'm not mistaken, Brent.
That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds about right. A couple weeks. Yep, I need to watch that one, don't I? Oh,
yeah, you
darn.
might.
That's a shame.
We've got the DC Alliance guys doing their DC through the years. Their most recent episode was Road to Perdition. We've got Katie bringing back her Canon Comics Corner. We've got Joe in the middle of his 30-plus days of Halloween, so I've been enjoying those. It's a nice little kind of appetizer for the morning, and I enjoy his thoughts. It makes me... some of the ones I've never watched before, I don't have to watch because Joe does a good job summarizing it in a very short amount of time. So, but hopefully, patrons, you're enjoying all that content. We can't do this without your support. But if you're not a member of our Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/GUA Network to join our Patreon. And last, but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com for omnibus hardcover collected edition need. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, shipped around the world. All these lovely Marvel Omnis and hardcovers and trades, all these are there available for you. And not only that, they're already at a discount, but you can get an extra $2 off all your shipping if you use the code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. Use it an unlimited amount of times. So let them know you're a listener, and we want to thank them for being our official sponsor. So, and Andrew noticing the shirt. Yep, very appropriate for our news at that point. And and we got Chris in the chat at that point, and saying Andrew's enjoying the content at that point. And but yeah, thank you guys for joining us. And all right, as you know, we are on a different night. So for the 6 weeks of Loki, we're going live on Fridays. DC Alliance has taken our spot for 6 weeks on Thursdays, and a walk through the multiverse is going on Tuesdays weekly now, covering Gen V, and then possibly maybe going weekly with the Invincible drop. So Joe's gonna be very busy at that point with a walk through the multiverse. So those are on Tuesdays, so everything has shifted, and we're excited about this. So, Brent, I think we've got everything, right? I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, we have. This is our first, I think our first Marvel Alliance on a Friday that wasn't a movie review.
I know, yeah. So,
but it's still a review. So
yeah, it is. So, all right. Let's start getting into it. Loki Season 2, Episode 1, non-spoiler thoughts. What do you got, Brent?
I haven't exactly been shy about it. I loved it. I thought this was an absolute great follow-up to season 2. I like where it picks up. I really like where it picks up. Something that I was curious about and interested about that I thought we were going to take longer to figure out. We kind of already got some answers, but with those answers came several more questions. And for me, I'll say that for the spoiler part, so I'm going to speak openly. But in general, I thought Tom Hiddleston and the company did a fantastic job with this. No, it doesn't feel 100% identical to season one. And I mean, of course not. You know, the directors are different. The cinematographer, director of photography, like it's different people behind the camera, but it's still the same show, and it still feels like Loki. And that is to me the most important thing. Like this is absolutely worthy follow up. I'm not interested yet in like comparing like this episode versus season one, episode one. I've seen some of that going around. I'm like, I don't know. It's hard for me to judge because I have everything that came after the first episode of season one. I don't have anything that comes after this one yet. I haven't seen anything else. So, but all I know is I absolutely loved it. So this show, you know, we're 7 episodes into this series overall, and so far it's just straight up banger for me.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I was kind of surprised I did this just because one, it's the first MCU show I've been able to watch where I'm not necessarily waking up in the morning to watch it, but I watched it immediately after I watched it again because one of the things that was really interesting, and I'm kind of surprised that they really leaned hard into it, was very much a new Whovian in the sense of the timey-wimey, wobbly nature of all the kind of time travel jargon they really threw in this episode. I said, I've got to go back and rewatch this because there's certain things I was like, I'm not sure I follow you on this, which one could say be good or bad, depending on how you look at it. But all in all, I really did enjoy the episode. It was one of those situations where I was happy that we didn't just say, "Oh, 3 months later," and we just picked up right where the last season left off. I don't think, based on how the episode ends, I don't think we're done with certain malfunction that's going on with Loki. I think it's going to be a kind of a temporary thing that's going to kind of come back at that point. But all in all, I think it's a good episode. Kiwi Kwan as
So good. So
Obi,
good.
like he's just a treasure, absolutely. Like you can tell, like the character itself, like it was almost written for him. Like he did such a good job with this. I'd like you said, I think you said it best, that some answers to our questions and a more of kind of, here's where we're at. We're going to take some of these pieces that we moved. You're going to get these answers, and we're going to start setting up more of a mystery of where this season is going to go. And it was a good episode. It's definitely not the best opening for, in my opinion, it's like not my favorite first episode, but it is a very, very good first episode. And I think after, quote unquote, the Marvel slide that's been going on in a lot of people's opinions of the content that they've been putting out, this is a very good, this is why we like Marvel content. This is exactly what they should do, despite the change in showrunners, despite the change in people from the first season. I think they did an excellent job bringing this season back where it is.
Absolutely. Well, we should probably just work towards those spoilers.
Let's work it. So we're going to take our first ad break. So again, if you have not seen Loki season 2 episode 1, stop, watch, and then listen to us. But if you don't care, we're about to spoil the heck out of it at that point. So we're going to take our first ad break. So listeners, with these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they could be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. So getting into this, starting out, we start by zooming out to see a statue of Kang, and they are littered everywhere in this TVA.
Yeah, just out of the gate right there, Kang himself and I mean, we're starting off where season 1 ended with Loki back at the TVA. They don't know who he is, and Loki season 1 ended with a huge statue of Kang, right? Like we got that huge look of him there, and we're opening with this one. And when season 1 ended, there was a whole lot of speculation and people talking about the fact that, like, is Loki in a branch timeline now? Is Loki in an alternate timeline, an alternate universe, if you will? Where did Sylvie send him to when she kicked him through the time door at the Citadel at the end of time? I thought we were probably looking at 2, 3, 4 episodes even of not rehash in the sense of rehashing season one, but rehash in the sense of rebuilding the Loki Mobius relationship, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that is such an important relationship in this show. And I thought we were just gonna basically play that game again of them trying to trust each other and learn who each other is and figure each other out, basically. Obviously, with Loki having his memories, but other than that, I was pleasantly surprised. I get it. I get why people think it wrapped up too fast. I actually don't agree. That just makes me more excited for where we are going. But I was excited because that actually I thought wasn't as interesting of a storyline as what they could have given us. For example, what they did give us with him bouncing through time in the TVA and the secrets, if you will, that has revealed about the TVA itself.
Yeah, I can understand some people's complaints in the sense of that, but doesn't mean we're not going to also keep going back and forth. Like I said in the non spoiler section, the idea of Loki time slipping, I don't think it's completely solved. I think it's a temporary fix that's going to reemerge.
I certainly think that's on the table. I It's hard because OB sure does seem to know an awful lot about how the system is works. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, he wrote the book on it, quite literally. He said he wrote the manual on the place. There's not a copy of it on every desk. I tend to believe him and take him at face value right now.
Hmm.
But crazy things have happened. The rules are changed. The rules of which he wrote that book,
Yep.
like the rules are different ever since He Who Remains was killed and the universe opened back up. Like the rules are different. So
Yeah.
I, let's put it this way. I believe that under the old rules, Loki would be free and clear of the time slipping problem.
Yep.
But you might be right that under the present day rules, that maybe by like episode 3, it's going to happen again.
And especially like where we see all these statues standing around there, like it's not just one statue. Like I said, it's a whole. It's almost like giving the impression that in this timeline we're in the, like we later find out, this is the past. This is the past TVA. At that point, that Kang is everywhere. Kang is watching everyone. He's almost like unbreakable, and it almost gives like how much these statues are overcoming like this massive nature. It's almost like the Colossus of Rhodes. They're kind of like being this kind of overarching figure.
Yeah, and a lot of people were trying to say that this scene was 400 years in the past. We don't actually know that.
No, because I think they're just taking what he said. Well, that was the last time he saw Mobius.
Exactly. And they're just people are just extrapolating that onto the rest of the timeline of that. We don't know that. Now, we didn't see had Mobius been in that when Obi and Loki were talking in the past, when Loki time slipped to the past,
Hmm.
had Mobi, which by the way was my favorite scene of the episode. I love the way they went back and forth with that. But if they had Mobius there, well then we could have started to put something on that. But we saw him at 3 different times, to our knowledge, 3 different times throughout the episode, in the past, in the present, and in the future. And
Hmm.
I feel like there's a thing in the past where, Loki's running away. He jumps onto the mail truck. The mail truck crashes in a few floors below, and that like whatever it was, like that monitor falls and cracks the logo on the floor. Right? Casey, like the guy who was like cleaning the floors and listening to the self help books, he's made a comment that the crack has been there as long as he remembered. So all we really know is he went back in time before the last time. I say the last time because I think it was more than once that King wiped their
Yeah.
memories. That's all we know. We don't know that it was just 400 years. Like it could
Hmm.
have been thousands of years. We don't truly know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're dealing with two separate times. Like one, like you said, where everyone had their memories up to that point, and then the time after where He Who Remains has been killed. And like you said, all the rules were changed. Now the sacred timeline has fallen apart. Did you? I always try to find these kind of secret, then like how Marvel and these Disney Plus shows like try to do like callbacks to like a comic book issue at that point. But the delivery truck being number 434 could be a reference to Fantastic Four 354, where they used a time train to escape the TVA.
Interesting. I hadn't looked that one up. Yeah, it's got to be something. Those
Yeah.
numbers are never meaningless. They may not always like mean something towards the show, but they're always an Easter egg or something.
Oh yeah. The truck hits the side of Kang's face, symbolizing possibly his eventual fall. It echoes later with the crack in the TVA floor with the logo, and then Loki pruning the wall later on to reveal the truth behind it. Like all these cracks are starting to appear at that point. Andrew saying, "Did you catch Casey was listening to the same podcast?" Yep, Stephen
I
Grant and
heard
Moon
that.
Knight. Yep.
Yes, I did not catch it. I caught he was listening to like a self help thing. I did not catch it was the same one that Stephen Grant was listening to in Moon Knight. I haven't gone back to like those scenes in Moon Knight yet myself to listen, but I love that detail. That is an incredible detail that they just did.
Well, here's some interesting other details. When Loki time slips back, he flashes forward. Things have changed where he was. The windows are replaced with metal paneling. The TVs go from circular to widescreen, and the crack though is still in the floor.
Yeah, they never bothered to fix the crack, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird also kind of that they would the things like the TV would they go from like an old CRT style to your flat panels. It's like why does that technology seemingly go forward, but other things in throughout the TVA still seem so retro?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, you already brought up when Casey does recognize him. It says, as long as I can remember, like something's been done to them, something's happened to them at some various points. We flash to Mobius and Hunter B-15, who are dealing with that. The pruning they have been doing is actually what they're basically considered. They're considering mass murder, and they're grappling with how to inform the TV about what they've been really up to. And then we get this introduction to XO5. Shows up and asks Mobius about his jet ski magazine and mentions Judge Gamble, which is a play on another character from the comics, Justin Gamble. He was a TVA professor who turned his back on them to stop a group known as the Incinerators. And yeah, I'm not a fan of XO5.
Jury's still out for me. I feel like I might like him as a character. No, we're definitely not meant to like him. He's clearly an antagonist. He's with General Dox, and
Mm-hmm.
they're debating. Like Hunter B-15 has this great scene there, and they're debating on are we pruning timelines and restoring timelines and restoring order, or are we straight up murdering millions and millions and billions of people? And
Mm-hmm.
they never really truly come to a conclusion there. I didn't catch her name, but the other judge in the room, not the guy who was sleeping, not that guy, but the other judge basically says, well, for now, we're done pruning. So she makes an announcement,
Judge
no
Gamble.
more pruning. Judge Gamble, thank you. And it's interesting because Docs very much is against that. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a bit, but isn't completely on board, very much still wants to go out. And while they're debating doing this, Loki pops in the room, steals the time stick from him, and it like threatens to prune him with it. I'm like, right there, it's like, oh, it just felt like a very intense scene.
It did. When we meet Judge Gamble, we see the other two judges. They seem, Judge Gamble, like you said, believes B-15's story, and which could highlight her turning against the organization as well.
Certainly open to it, at least, right? Like, open-minded for sure.
They're in the quote unquote war room just before Mobius sees the soldier that pruned him and Mobius. I like how he says, I guess you were just following orders, at that point, kind of a tip of the hat of the quote unquote excuse that Nazi SS used to give at that point, where we're just following orders. Well, there's problems with that.
Yep.
Now in the past, you see Loki in the war room with 3 heads of the judges still there because Kang never replaced them. However, he did cover up the 5 versions of Kang heads that are we'll later find behind the mural. And those were probably, I couldn't make necessary out, but that was probably the original Council of Kangs.
I feel like that's a reasonable thought. Like there's some debate over was the TVA in place prior to the multiversal war or after the multiversal war, in which He Who Remains was the only one there. But regardless, there is 5 statues, and I don't think it's. I like your idea because as vain as I did feel He Who Remains probably is or would have been back in his younger days, I don't know if he would have had 5 statues of himself in the same room. Wouldn't
Yeah.
rule it out, but it just the idea of it being an earlier incarnation of the Council of Kings does make sense. And I like the way that Loki just pruned the wall
Yeah.
to show everybody what was behind there. And I'll be honest, at first I'm like, oh, it's a little convenient that pruning just showed that much of it. But then I remembered, well, the nightsticks are limited. They don't just prune everything. That's why they had the bombs that would do it, right? Like
Yeah.
there were bombs that would prune entire timelines. These were made for pruning much significantly smaller amounts because that's what they use on people. And so it actually kind of made sense to me. The wall behind it did not also disappear. But regardless, it was a great scene, and you could tell none of them had ever seen it before, or at least had no memories of seeing it before.
And they listened to a recording of Loki explaining the truth. With some of the judges listening, and like you said, one falling asleep. I think that's a commentary on bureaucracy.
Yeah.
In the past, we see Loki use the same recording device, but it's something else in the recording. It's Kang's proposal to Ravonna,
who he called a marvel. It's like, you can't say that word like that, just throwing it around all willy-nilly. Marvel is an important word.
Yeah. In the comics, there is a new origin story that comes out of Kang the Conqueror, Only Myself Left to Conquer. We see an older version of Kang in this one shot where that visits a younger one, and he tried to train him. And the younger one escapes to meet a woman from a different tribe, and that's Ravonna. And which the older Kang kills her and sends the young one on a darker path. He meets several other different versions of Ravonna reincarnated, but every one of them ends up rejecting him because they saw his true nature. And then he turns into the bitter older version who goes back and starts the whole cycle again.
Really, really good story.
Yeah.
Highly recommend reading that one.
This might be who He Who Remains is, and kept her as a judge just out of the organization.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, I cannot stress enough how good that story was. I loved it when I read that. But I like those kind of time loop stories that circle back on themselves. Keep that in mind for later. But highly recommend that.
Yeah. Back in the present, Hunter B-15 talks about how everyone had a life on the other timelines when she discovered due to Renslayer's real one. And General Dox has like you said, has the hardest time believing this because she's devoted her life to propping up the lie. Her medals are actually Kang heads. Might have been one maybe during the multiversal war.
Certainly plausible. Yeah. It'll be interesting to find out if we see anything about her life prior to this. And it's also interesting to think about the TVA. Apparently just none of them age ever. I never really thought about it last season, but just if they have been there for minimum 400 years, but I think that is truly a minimum, then there's just no aging going on there. But I guess that's just because they're always in the TVA where time is suspended, and it wasn't until they left that things got exposed to those chronal energies.
Yeah. General Dox is actually a play on a character from the comics called Paradox, where it's gender swap, but he was one of the judges that appeared during a She-Hulk trial before he was erased from existence with a retroactive canon, she said. Now, she wants the judges to take a stance on and order all hunters stop pruning. And, once, as you said, once Loki comes in, reveals the truth beyond the mural, that's when the judge makes the decision that, nope, we're done with pruning, order all pruning to stop at that point. And, it's rather interesting, X5 and Dox putting their heads together, and B-15 even has a reaction to that.
The way that they looked, like that, it was intimate, but it was uncomfortably intimate, the way that they did that.
I don't know what to make of it totally.
I mean, I know there's a lot of people who felt really weird about the Loki Sylvie romantic aspect of their relationship. That one shot to me was weirder than anything Sylvie and Loki did last season.
I mean, again, we just don't know the relationship, but it just seemed like there's obviously, very obviously, something more going on with that.
Hmm.
Um, you know, when they leave at that point, Loki tells Mobius that what's going on and that he who remains can't is the devil. Now remember, he's only seen he who remains just for like a few minutes at that point, but he's already calling him the devil. He already is fearful of what he is capable of at that point, even though he who remains has been killed. He has seen when he was powerful, at least the idea of him being powerful. And they're talking about, and they're behind, and it's pointed out like the three murals that they're standing and talking about in the back room. We see the basic timeline war between the Kangs to attain timeline supremacy. The second one is the timekeepers constructing the sacred timeline. Notice that it looks like a tree, much like Across the Spider-Verse.
Well, that's just consistency there, and we know that Marvel talked with Marvel and Sony talked about the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that's. I haven't heard anyone ask the question, but I would be shocked if that was accidental.
Yeah. And with people praying to them, blindly follow their false gods and don't question them. Final one shows them together pressing their hands in prayer. Loki, they go back and forth with each other at that point, and kind of Mobius kind of presses them, and Loki's like, the fight with Sylvie was a draw. And I, at that moment, go, yeah, sure, Jane. It didn't look like it to me.
That so okay, so the draw thing was interesting because Loki has seen. Keep in mind, this was Loki who, like, just I don't know, a week or two ago, was effectively trying to take over the New York. Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Loki that had just come there. He didn't go through all the stuff and through the life lessons that he went through in Dark World and Ragnarok, Infinity War, and so on. He's come a long ways though. Like he's I think he's come farther than the main timelines Loki ever did.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
but he still has that vein, that pride to him. And the
Mm-hmm.
second Mobius implies that he lost, but no, it was a draw. Like he immediately, like, just real quick, reverts it back. It's kind of like when you see an old high school friend of yours who you hadn't seen in a long time, you just start to revert back to some of those old behaviors and thought processes. Like, no, it was a draw. I didn't do it. Like, it's like he just picked at a wound there by implying that he was emasculated or something by not winning.
Andrew, thank you for the super chat. Loki has to be my favorite MCU Disney Plus show. I mean, no argument from us.
Absolutely.
Julio in the chat really enjoyed this episode. So a lot of praise for this episode. Mobius says, you know what, we're gonna talk through this. We're gonna, let me take you to this. He's talking about this guy that thinks can possibly help him out with this time slipping, and takes him down to, as we kind of referenced earlier, Kihue Kwan, playing OB, stands for Ouroboros, which is the title of this episode, for his time slipping issue. Now we get some, I have to say, some outstanding one-shot takes during this time, and I think they really add these one-shots even later when OB is doing kind of a one-shot walk and talk at that point. I think it really does add to the gravity of these sequences.
Yeah, and like DC Outlaw messaged me and said something like he could tell the cinematographer was different. Like it felt different. Not that it was bad, but it did feel different. And I agree. But these are the kind of shots that I really, really enjoy. So I'm still happy. And there's that great one shot sequence on Lamentis and the third episode of season 1. I'm glad we're still getting some of that. I don't need them all to be crazy action scenes. I'm just one shot sequences. Period. I just am captivated by. So yes, I thoroughly enjoyed those.
Yeah. The idea of time slipping, I mean, it's supposed to be impossible in the TVA. There's not supposed to be any time travel within the TVA, but because Sylvie used He Who Remains temp pad on Loki, which allowed him to actually travel back and forth in time in the TVA, she inadvertently gave him the ability to slip back and forth through time, and a little bit of Loki spread across time. So that's what the result of this that happened. So when they come to OB's shop and he repairs all of TVA's tech. Now his name is kind of dates back. Ouroboros refers to a snake that eats its own tail, which highlights a never-ending cycle of destruction. See the mural. War happens, last one standing forms a TVA and waits at the end of time for Loki to show up, leading to their death and the multiverse opening up, and the cycle repeats itself. Even he who remains warned them, if you kill me, this is just all going to happen again.
Right, exactly. It's all just going to happen. It's a circle of life, if you will,
Or circle of destruction in this case.
circle of destruction. The Obi character was just fun, right? And the one thing that I'm like a little dodgy about right now is I have this feeling like it would be easy for his character to get left behind. Mobius and Loki, they go off on their next time travel adventure. I'm going to presume, again, I haven't seen anything, but I didn't even watch trailers for next week. I don't watch those.
Yeah, I
presume they're going to go after Sylvie. Maybe that's going to look like going after General Dox to get to Sylvie, or maybe they're just going to try and talk Sylvie. And keep in mind, Loki saw Sylvie in this episode when she said, "Hey, there you are." Now, I don't think she was talking to him, but we'll get there. But he saw her, so he knows she's still alive. Because he assumed that she killed him, but he didn't technically know. He didn't see it happen. And so he knows she's alive. I got to assume that's what they're going to do. And it just feels like the kind of thing it'd be easy for Obi to just be like, all right, I'm going to go back down to my, I forgot the name of the place, but research and development, but that's not what it was. But basically the R&D lab or whatever, and go down there. And like, I just hope that's not the case, right? Like, I hope he doesn't need to have a significant part of every episode, but I hope we at least get a couple more good scenes with him throughout the remaining five episodes.
Yeah. And Mobius said it's been a long time since he's been down there, since he says he's not sure if he's ever been there, signaling even Mobius' memory has been wiped, while Obi's has not.
So we know Mobius has been wiped within the last 400 years.
Yes. So which is why he remembers Loki visiting him in the past, whereas everyone else forgets it. We get an idea of this based on Mobius's last visit, which was apparently 400 years ago. And, I like how Obi in the past is the one that doesn't have glasses. Now in the present, we see Obi think Mobius gave him his Obi nickname, but it was actually Loki in the past.
Right, it was Loki in the past, yes. And that scene was just so much fun as Mobius in the present is being told like, oh, well, you need one of these gizmos, right? You need this time MacGuffin gizmo. And in the past,
the temporal aura extractor.
Thank you. In the past, Loki's like, well, can you get me one? And so he builds it to him. And then back in the present, I don't have one. Wait, yes, I do. And he just bends over and picks it up like it's just sitting there the whole time.
That was a cool effect.
And it just, everything about it, it was just such a fun scene.
And this is basically what they call, it's known as the bootstrap paradox. That says that when you open your door, you find a package with a book on the on a book with time travel, and use it then, and then in the future version of yourself drops off that same package. So that's basically what's been going on.
Yeah, it's I want to mention that we'll bring this back up again later, but it's kind of like with the Flash on the CW where he goes back in time to save his mom, and a future version of himself waves him off, and then spoilers for the final season, we see the reverse of that when he goes back in time and waves off his younger self. It's sort of like that.
Oh yeah, very much so. And as you said, we see Loki get Obi to build it in the past, that he has it right there. Obi mentions if you fall into a black hole, you turn into spaghetti, which is happening, which is what is happening basically to Loki.
Yeah, and it turns out that's what Wanda must have done to Mr. Fantastic. But
yeah,
that's what I thought of when I heard turning into spaghetti. I immediately thought of Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, and they talk about that since the Sacred Timeline has created infinite number of branches, the Time Loom, which Victor Timely is building, as we see in the trailers, because we see him in his presentation, that is the Time Loom, is becoming overloaded as it's trying to kind of contain everything. And so that's when they go down and head to the loom. And with that, Loki then time slips into the future where he is searching for a pruning rod because Obi has said the way that they stop this is, they're going to go out to the time loom. They have this kind of hook device, the temporal aura extractor. They fire it into there, and if he prunes himself, they'll be able to kind of catch him as he's spread out through time. They can grab him at that point, which is, kind of a big risk.
Sure.
So when Loki time slips into the future, because that's the first time, like, he looks around and thinks he's back in the past, but he's really in the future, and he's searching for a pruning rod. He hears his phone ringing. We don't know who's on the other end of that phone. He supposedly sees Sylvie climbing out of the elevator. He says, "There you are," and then he is pruned. I kind of wrote this down in the notes, and I know Travis brought it up in Geekverse last night. I'm on the same page that is future Loki that pruned him.
Yes.
It is not Sylvie. I am convinced it is future Loki.
I don't believe Sylvie pruned him. It is possible. I would not discount it, but I believe he got pruned. It sounds so bad. I believe he got pruned from behind. And when Sylvie says, "There you are," I don't even necessarily think she's talking to Loki. I think she's talking to future Loki who was there.
Which is not a variant. It is still the only Loki. It's just, again, we're in the futures. And I'm sticking to my fact or fiction. I'm saying there will be no future Lokis in this. I mean, no more variant Loki, excuse me.
I believe we are going to see this scene again.
Yes.
Probably in the finale, but at some point, again, this is going to circle back around. I believe, maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, that's okay. I'm certainly open to it, but I believe we are going to see. And I rewatched the scene afterwards because I'm like trying to watch, like they cut back to the present when he goes back to Mobius, and then they do give us a glimpse of what looks like X5 going, like opening up the time door or something like that. But it's not clear to me that I think they wanted us to believe he's the one who pruned Loki in the future, but I don't think it's clear it's even the same location, and that screams red herring to me.
Oh yeah, and I love the suit that Mobius has to get into, and now Obi's warning him, like,
it's the most clunky thing,
and especially the duct tape on the helmet thing. Oh yeah, that'll fix it. But like the warning he gives him, saying like, there's only a certain amount of time you can be out there because every kind of pulse from the time loom is going to, like, basically age the suit, and it's the only thing protecting you. And if you're out there for too long, you're gonna be stuck out there. You're gonna age, and you're just gonna be lost into time. So we're all like, who've seen shows like this. Okay, it's gonna be one of those. They're gonna come close to it at that point, and Mobius won't give up on Loki. He's gonna wait out there until the last possible moment, and it all. They eventually grabs Loki, and they pull him in at that point. But it's just almost like that was kind of a predictable sequence.
It absolutely was a predictable sequence. We all knew how it was going to go. It was just a question of how was Loki going to get pruned and get back. That was the interesting part. But yes, absolutely. Yep. We've seen the trailers, and while it certainly felt like I haven't watched trailers in quite a while. Most of my memories of the trailers were scenes that we saw in this episode. Not all of them, but most of them. And we saw the credit scene at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We knew Mobius wasn't going to lose his skin. We knew Loki was going to survive at the very least. And so it's like, from that standpoint, yes, it was anticlimactic. But for me, it was, one, OB showed that he cared. He did what he could, including giving extra time. 5, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3. Like, it took him a while to count those 5. Those 5 seconds went awfully slow. OB cares. He absolutely does care. Could just be he's lonely, but he still cares. And then what happened to Loki in the future, like we just talked about, those are the parts of the scene that to me were the most interesting, the most relevant. And it's why, even though, yes, we knew it was going to work, it's fine. Like, it's totally fine that they did that because it was just a vehicle for those other things.
And that's, that's the joy of the show. We've got to kind of see exactly where this takes us. And, they make it through, and that's when Loki says, we've got to go get Sylvie. But General Dox and her soldiers are after Sylvie as well. She is arming them with pruning rods, time bombs, everything. I think they're going to wipe out timelines, and in the guise of maybe blaming Sylvie.
Yes.
And so that way they can get away with it and against the orders of what they said, no more pruning.
We are on the same page there. I was going to ask if that's what you thought about that scene as well, because for what, yes, it's a Loki. It's the version of Loki who's given them more trouble than anybody. So sure, like, you could make an argument all that firepower was for Sylvie, but it's not. Dox made it pretty clear. She wanted to go take out timelines, and she is going to take out as many of them as she can.
Yep. And so we get an end credit scene. We haven't had one of these in a while in a Disney Plus show.
Yeah.
And uh, even before that, the credits, there are a lot of Easter eggs in it, and I'm just gonna say, like, there's a lot of great breakdown videos of looking just at the end credits alone. A lot of hints towards the future, so check a lot of those out. Friend of the show Ryan Airy on Screen Crush. You've got Heavy Spoilers. They do a lot of great breakdowns, but a lot for the end credits. Now the post credits, we see Sylvie arriving in 1982 Broxton, Oklahoma. Now that
Branch
is a big call.
timeline. Branch timeline. It also said.
Yes. Now this is a interesting thing from the comics. Broxton, Oklahoma, was where Asgard was set up during like kind of the siege era at that, but right before siege began, that's where Asgard was in in on Earth. So Sylvie then shows up at a McDonald's, and we know from the trailers that she's going to end up working at McDonald's. But when he asks her what does she want to have, he offers chicken nuggets. She wants everything. And remember, her goal throughout the first season was killing the person who was responsible for all her torture and torment, which was He Who Remains, did that, and to get her freedom. Well, now she's got it and wants to experience everything, whatever that may be, even if working at a McDonald's and eating all their food.
The scenes in the trailers of her working at the McDonald's, I had assumed that this was going to be from like an alternate version of her in the past or something like that.
Yeah.
And I did not, never once did I truly suspect that it would just be her as is post battle at the end of time, post, pushing Loki through the time door and killing He Who Remains. I did not anticipate that she's like, what are you going to do next? I'm going to go work at McDonald's. I didn't have that on my bingo card.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think we both said, again, a good episode, a good kind of, I wouldn't even call it a cliffhanger. It's just a taste of things to come for the next episode at that point. We know the screeners that have gone out are basically the first 4 episodes. And so just be careful with spoilers out there with everything like that. But,
and there was a fan event that had at least 2 episodes that Kevin Feige was at.
Yeah. So it sounds like, again, they're very confident in this. A lot. I've not seen too many, barely any negative reviews from those who have gotten the screeners, saying that a lot of them are saying this is Marvel return to form. This is exactly what we've needed. And I'm looking forward to what the next episode's going to bring us.
Yeah, 2 things. One, I loved Mobius's line. I have no memory of my memory being wiped. Great line.
Yep.
2, I want to ask you to weigh in on the conversation I'm seeing circle around the time travel in this versus Avengers Endgame. Do you have any, like, people are saying like they're breaking all the continuity, the canon is totally broken. I have my own thoughts on that. Clearly the rules are different, but what do you think about it?
Said it before and I'll say it again.
Do you
care? You said it earlier. It's like the death of He Who Remains changed everything. The rules are different. It is no longer the same. So you can, for those of you that are crying foul at that point, okay, be upset about it. But the rules are in place until Kevin Feige and the writers deem it to be different to fit their means. So here we are. Guess what? Comics do it all the time. Brent basically said at that point, it's the same opinion that I have when it comes to the idea of who shot first, Han or Greedo. I don't care.
You don't care, yeah.
I just don't care. Because why should I going to be upset about that one thing if the rest of it's, okay, I'm slightly irked by it, but it's not going to be enough for me to write off the entire show just based on that idea, because I have yet to see. There's always holes in time travel stuff and how people explain it. People bash Endgame and say another one's better. I think they all have holes in it. Time travel's just fun. I'm gonna enjoy time travel however they want it. It's not supposed to really exist.
So I was thinking about it today on my way home from work. In general, I go into a time travel story willing to just let them tell me the rules of their story, and I'll roll with it, because
do you turn your brain off?
I mean, I love to, because we know that's what Clay likes to do when he's watching these shows. That's his
Yes.
favorite thing to do, is turn your brain off and watch. But that's still funny. But yeah, you know what? This kind of show, no, I don't actually turn my brain off. There are definitely shows I do watch and just turn my brain off. That's what Fast and Furious is for. But I was thinking about it this way. I go into a time travel story and I'm just willing to roll with whatever the rules are for that, as long as they follow their rules, right? Just give me your rules and follow them. I guess it's a hot take. I don't think they broke the rules of Avengers Endgame. One, you touched on it yourself. This is the biggest reason He Who Remains died. Everything changed according to the time travel rules.
Mm-hmm.
All of it changed, right? So there's that out of the gate. On top of that, I don't think that the time travel rules in Avengers Endgame even technically completely squared away with what Doctor Strange did at the end of the first Doctor Strange movie, when he, granted it was several minutes, but Wong and several others were killed, and he rewound time, or not Wong, I'm sorry, Mordo and several others were killed. He rewound time and brought them back to life that way. Like I'm okay for there to be little inconsistencies, but the other big in story reason why I just don't think it matters is the methods of time travel were radically different. And the way that the Avengers were time traveling was human technology. Yes, it involved Pym particles, and it was Tony Stark as the human in question, but it was still just their technology. What the TVA has is on such a different scale. The rules of what they can do are going to be different. The TVA is a place where the Infinity Stones are powerless, whereas put together, they're all powerful in the meantime. Like, they're operating on a different scale, so the rules of the game are not the same. And I'm like, in story, I think it makes sense that the rules are different.
Yeah, again, it's a time travel. It's not supposed to be. It's got to be somewhat believable, but time travel is gonna have holes. So if they want to change the rules, fine. It's an easy headcanon. He who remains has been killed. Everything changes at that point.
Pretty much.
So. But all right, well, we will be breaking down next week with episode 2. So we're going to take our next ad break before we get into our singular news item, but a pretty big one at that. So listeners, we're going to take another ad break. So our listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on. They can be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right. So, DC Alliance always claims that they don't get the where they were at that point. All the news would drop after it. Occasionally, I can understand that's why they're moving to where they are now. However, occasionally we at Marvel Alliance do an episode, and then we have to wait almost a whole week to talk about it at that point. And that happened last week. So this coming from Deadline, Marvel Studios execs are meeting soon to hear writers' pitches for the as they said, quote unquote, coveted X-Men job. So with a deal in place for the Writers Guild, studios have begun taking aim at setting writers for their open assignments. Marvel Studios is looking to set the bar with what will likely be one of the most sought-after jobs for any scribe. Sources at Deadline tell that Marvel will start setting writer meetings later this fall for pitches on the anticipated MCU X-Men movie. Insiders add that there is no rush to fill the job since the film hasn't even had a date yet, and it's more likely that the writer decision will be made at the top of 2024, and as always, Marvel declined to comment. While it will still be a bit before the X-Men movie makes its theaters, the news that Marvel has started development on the live-action picture is sure, obviously, to excite us fans. Following the Fox acquisition, Marvel President Kevin Feige had been overseeing the development process, but there has been no rush to reboot the franchise with so many other projects ahead. I kind of wanted X-Men to be part of this phase. I think the X-Men will be a part of it, but not in the way we want. The MCU X-Men, I am quite confident, will be post-Secret Wars. The closest we're going to get is obviously the Fox X-Men starting to appear in films like Deadpool 3, but also we at least get X-Men 97. Seeing this, even though they're going to start taking them in the next couple of months at that point, this is the first real significant news we have had about the movement on the MCU version of the X-Men.
To me, this news is great twofold. One, the WGA strike is over and we are
Yep.
seeing Marvel go back to work, right? Like Marvel writers, and we already knew they were there. I thought I saw another report about Blade having another screenwriting pass or overhaul or
Hmm.
whatever. Like we already knew they were, but this is just very significant because finally the WGA strike is over. Hopefully the Screen Actors Guild can also come to a satisfactory conclusion sooner than later. But the other side of that is, yes, like you said, it's the first real time we're getting any concrete X-Men news since 2019 when at San Diego Feige referenced we didn't even talk about the mutants or whatever it is he said at
Yeah.
Comic-Con that year. And yes, of course, obviously X-Men 97, Miss Marvel's been basically retconned into a mutant, and well, she was declared a mutant on the show and then retconned into one in the comics. I still haven't read that yet, but like I'm like, this is all awesome news. I just wish we had some names. Like it's too early. They're just
Yeah.
taking pitches. I'm like, I just wish I had some names or something. So I be like, oh, I don't know who that is. Let me look up what they've done and then look at some of their other projects. But time will tell. The projects are moving forward. The football is moving forward. Whatever you want to say, and that is exciting.
Yeah, I mean it's. I know we've got some questions coming up. I think a number, most if not some of my factor fictions are X-Men related, as kind of as the excitement for this one. Again, it's just the beginning. This is a long process. As I said, they've got plenty of time to put this with everything. The SAG is still on strike at that point. So I mean, at least they can start moving the ball, that they don't need to even make casting decisions. They can make writers' decisions. They can make directors' decisions without even needing to touch cast yet. So I'm excited. I'm glad they're taking pitches finally for this. It begs the question of like, what would be the first story at that point? Could be a fun question later on. So, but all right, well, that is all the news for this week, which is fine for Brent and I. Again, when we talk about shows at that point, news being still a little light is okay. We've got always Loki to talk about. So let us get into that feedback. I know you always put out the Spidey signal, Brent, for questions. So what do you got for us? Oh, you know what? I'm going to take it back. I totally forgot to bring up DC Outlaws. So let's hit that one first.
Okay, let's do that one first.
Meant to do this with Loki. So DC Outlaw had asked, do you guys think that the events of Ant-Man Quantumania, Spider-Man No Way Home, and or Multiverse of Madness will be referenced in the show as being consequences of Sylvie killing He Who Remains? What do you think on that one, Brent?
I don't think Quantumania will.
Okay.
Gosh, this is hard to say. Multiverse of Madness at best. Like I don't think they're gonna mess with No Way Home. I'm actually not even clear on what the rules are. Like if they want to directly reference and like see like events of Spider-Man and other projects. Yes, I know that Multiverse of Madness does have a reference to Spider-Man No Way Home, but I this is a hard one because on one hand I could see them just ignoring it, right? Like we went through Multiverse of Madness stuff like that without any references to Loki, and it was significant. But you know what? I kind of want it. I kind of like the idea, so I'm gonna say I think it's possible, but I wouldn't bet money on it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I could easily see a throwaway line at that point, much like we saw in Multiverse of Madness, much like we saw in we even get a throwaway line in Across the Spider-Verse. So
I would love to see something thrown there. It's a reference to that. That'd be fun.
That would be fun. So, all right. So, what other questions we got this week?
Omari Daniels. Marvel likes to pay homage to a character's first look, like Daredevil's yellow and red suit and She-Hulk. When the X-Men appear, if we get the original 5, do you want their original costumes or something more modern?
I would be happy with a little mix at that point, but the MCU has definitely not shied away from costumes. So, the original costumes, I think that no, because that harkens back to the Fox era. At that point, I think we're gonna go with the more modern. Everyone gets a unique costume.
I wouldn't mind seeing a version of their original costumes, but I feel like by the end of the first movie, they need to be in their own costumes, and I don't want it to be the final scene like it was X-Men Apocalypse. I mean, like at least give me the final battle with the climactic battle with them in their new costumes with their own separate individual costumes.
Mm-hmm. So,
All right,
What?
from Clay, sticking with X-Men actually. Clay says it's widely assumed that the OG X-Men will team will debut as the first members of the X-Men in the MCU, regardless of if they do or not. Which of these 5 characters do you think should have their own Disney Plus show? So basically, from the original 5, who should have their own Disney Plus show?
Why don't you go with yours? I already have an idea of what you're going to go with.
My answer feels like a cop-out, but it's my genuine reaction. 5-episode series, 1 per member. And
okay. That's a cop-out, but that's not bad.
That is what I would do. And the reason I say this is because none of these characters can sustain, like they've never been able to sustain a comic run for longer than a handful of issues. And I just because of that, I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I don't, maybe this is on me. I don't see them as long individual stories very often. Like that's just not what I did. So, but give us a mini version of Phase 1 Avengers of introducing them all and then bring them all together at the end. Maybe just one per show of introducing them all. You can even, I wouldn't want it to be that, this formulaic, but you can have Xavier showing up and recruiting them in each of them, something like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in the sense of, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's definitely, there's a reason there's kind of, they can do a movie as a team, but separately it's not impossible, but it is a small, heavy lift at that point. I could do a cop-out answer and choose basically a Cyclops in Jean Grey kind of show. If I have to pick,
hold a gun to my head, I'll say Cyclops. But I'm gonna hope Alex Summers is in it.
I'm gonna say Cyclops, even though Cyclops is still wrong. At that point, I've got comic evidence. I've got comic evidence to prove that Cyclops was wrong.
Shots fired. Whoa, no, Cyclops was right. However,
no, I've got comic handling. I've saved that for
putting him in his own series could be considered wrong, just because it never works.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
All right, we have 2 more came in, but one of them's from Snell and it's a fact or fiction. So let's do it with those. So final straight up question, Jim, deciding to get heavy on us here. Jim Scroggs, when you pass on, what Marvel character do you want to greet you, and what do you think they would say?
What Marvel character? Okay, Marvel character. Do you have one in mind?
I went with I do. I was thinking about this. I'm going with Uncle Ben. I'm not sure who else would be more comforting when you just died than Uncle Ben. And what do I think he would say? Well, I hope it would be your family will be okay. Like that's what I would want to hear. I'm like, other than that, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like the right time to have Ben Grimm say it's clobbering time. So,
be an interesting way to greet you. I'm gonna go with Black Panther.
Okay,
yeah,
I think that's a good choice.
Be kind of a calming kind of thing, and I'd just be tempted to bow and say no, we don't do that here.
We don't do that here. Yes. Oh gosh, I love that line so much. Jim, I demand you message me your answer to this question.
Yes,
you send this to us. I demand you answer it.
And it would be cool for him to say and get this man a shield, because why don't I need a shield?
That's right. Get this man a shield.
All right, so fact or fictions this week. Let me pull up the ones from last week, which were yours. Daredevil will appear in the Thunderbolts. 100% fiction.
Nice. I mean, I went in fiction too. So.
Yeah, I did too.
Now what's Felicia Hardy visiting him on the other side? Omari Domino.
I'd like to tell my luck ran out. Felicia Hardy. Yep. What is?
It is kind of funny. Felicia Hardy and Domino. You got the couple luck related characters there.
Yeah, Julio's saying, I heard that the Blade script is being completely rewritten. Well, that would be the Up-Teens time at that point, so why not?
Good. This is the time. Write it.
Yep.
Do it now instead of after you make the movie.
But Amari and Travis, those are very good. Very good.
Excellent answers. Excellent.
Number 2, David Hasselhoff will appear as Nick Fury in Secret Wars. 22% said fact, 78% said fiction.
78%, including myself, because I said fiction, just don't like fun.
Yep. This was slightly surprising. Like in the comics, the Sentry will be truly retconned into the history of the MCU and people not remembering him. 53% said fact, 47% said fiction.
Wow, proverbial coin toss.
Yeah. Number 4 is from DC Outlaw, Crimson Cowl AGD. Besides Wonder Man and the unconfirmed Vision Quest, the next Marvel Disney Plus show that will be announced will be a new season of an existing show, i.e. Moon Knight Season 2 or Loki Season 3. Here's another one, 53% said fact, 47% said fiction.
Interesting.
All right, so here are mine. Like I said, I think we'll see if maybe this Loki one fits and see how I'm feeling. But we'll start off with some of the X-Men. The first X-Men team will have one new mutant that has never before been featured on screen, but has been in the comics prominently in recent years.
Interesting. I like the. I'm going to say fact, but I'm gonna ask. Do you have anyone in mind? Keeping in mind, I really haven't read the X-Men that much in the Hickman era. I read a little bit, but I haven't read that much, so I don't truly know who's been prominent lately.
I'm trying to think of someone that, and I should have prepared for this one in that sense, like who could be on there. That would Kitty's already been on there. Kitty's been very prominent lately.
I don't know how prominent, but isn't there a Wakandan who has been with Storm? I mean,
yes,
I'm only getting glimpses of the X-Men as they pop up in other books.
Yep.
And in the Black Panther book, I think they went to Mars
or
something like
they're
that.
on Mars. Yeah,
and there was a Wakandan who was a mutant.
Yes, on Morocco.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good answer. No one really sticks out of my mind just because of what's currently going on in Fall of X. some things have transpired. So, but no, I should have came prepared for that one. So no one really sticks out in my mind. But I think that would be, they always like giving someone you always want to pay attention to comics in the sense of like who's getting more prominent roles. I think it'll be basically kind of a post Fall of X with the seeing what's going to be next. So, all right, next one. The X-Men will have a crossover movie with the Avengers.
Fact. Why would they not? Like that would just be. It's not going to be necessarily the one that
I don't want Avengers versus X-Men. That's not what has to happen.
I'm actually totally fine with that, but it's not going to be the one. It's not going to be the cast we want. Like Avengers versus X-Men, Avengers with the X-Men. We want to see Captain America and Cyclops face off, right? We want to see like it's not, and I mean Steve Rogers and Cyclops face. Like it's not going to be that. What about Reed's kid, Christopher Evans? That's from the last question.
Yeah,
Franklin.
Franklin has Valeria? I think he's talking Franklin at that point
because she's not a mutant, right?
She's not a mutant. He's really not a mutant anymore.
Yeah, didn't something change there?
Yeah, if you read Fantastic Four, X-Men at that point, they kind of put the end to Franklin being a mutant. So he's a little different. But yes, at one point he was considered a mutant. Yeah. So, but yeah, lots of good crossover potential. All right. So I'm gonna hold off the Loki one till next time.
Okay.
I think I'll be pretty safe with that. This kind of Chris Evans was bringing this up, but it was one of my fact or fictions. Wolverine will not be on the first MCU X-Men team. I'm not saying he's not going to be on an X-Men team, but he will not be part of the first incarnation of the team in the first movie.
All right, I need a little bit of clarification.
Okay.
Do you mean he will not appear in the movie, or final battle happens and he is not on that lineup?
He is not in the lineup. If we're talking about the X-Men lineup, if we're just calling whatever lineup we want to have, 5, 6, 7, whatever, he is not in the first movie's X team. Period.
Man, that's. I want to say fact. I really think they need to give a little bit of breathing room between Hugh Jackman and the MCU Wolverine, and they are just resetting that clock with Deadpool 3. But man, it's Wolverine. It's one of Marvel's biggest characters. How do you not? Man, I'm gonna go with fact, but that's more of a it's what I think should happen and not what I think will happen, I guess.
I am going fiction. I'm a pretty strong fiction on this. The biggest reason is kind of what you hint towards. Hugh Jackman's Deadpool 3. Hugh Jackman will return in Secret Wars. They I believe they are going to want distance from that to kind of like let Hugh Jackman have literally the final time he's going to be as Wolverine.
So you're saying he will be on the team or won't be on the team?
No, he will not. He will.
Okay.
He will not. So excuse me. So I'm a fact. Yeah, I'm a fact. You're right. Yeah, will not be on the team. Yes. So I'm a fact. I'm a very hard fact on that because of that. Yeah, because of that reason, they will want to separate it. They're gonna want to. Wolverine will be on in the sequel and the new team, whatever at that point. But in that first movie, that X-Men team will not have Wolverine on it.
All right. And then let's see. So that's your last one, right?
Yep, that's my last one.
And then Mr. Snell, Loki season 3 is happening. Fact or fiction?
I could see fact. I'm a fact on it.
I'm a fiction today, but ask me again in 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
Let me get through a couple more episodes, but I'm a fiction today. Mainly because I feel like non-graded answer. If there is a season 3, it'll be radically different because the TVA stuff will be done by the time they get back around to that. Because the King stuff will be done, I think, by the time they get back around to it. But I'm a fiction today.
All right. So can you put that in the show notes, Brent, so I can make sure to have that?
It's already there.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right. So let us get to our final topic of the night, and that would be Comic Book Club. Yes. The Punisher, issue 4. And my goodness, what I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be
fun.
Sick.
It's fun.
I don't mean to be sick and twisted at this point, but for a Punisher issue, you put Frank in basically he doesn't have any weapons to really speak of. He's got a pistol at that point, but it's not going to do him too good against all the things. And he ends up in a zoo, and he uses the zoo as his weapon. It is crazy what he does.
Dumps a guy in like a piranha pool or whatever kind of fish that was. Manipulates someone into running into a snake. He punches a polar bear in the face to piss it off and leads it into people. Oh my gosh! This was making me question myself because I was laughing at this issue. I think the absurdity of these situations.
I think the most absurd moment is like the shadowed where the polar bear knocks off the head of one of the monsters. I was like, wow, that happened.
That was incredible. And later there's like a comment of like, there's a head around here somewhere.
I mean, that was the most ridiculous. I mean, they wrote this to be ridiculous at this point, you know?
They absolutely did. And I kind of felt like at first I was like, this is not going to be like, I thought it was going to be like a much sadder episode issue because it's like they're opening up with our detective who's trying to hunt him down and, his partner had killed himself in the last one. And they're all just making fun of him for it. I'm like, gosh, you guys are heartless.
They really are. That was awful.
As soon as we get to this low level person who just stumbles across Punisher's whereabouts and it's like, it leads into this crazy zoo escapade. I had a blast. I'm sorry.
And then we get the introduction of as she says, call herself Detective Molly at that point, like saying, "Hey, you're the detective's biggest loser. I'm the department's biggest embarrassment." And she explains that apparently caught on a hot mic, refusing to get with the commissioner at that point. And so he's like, let's show them all and take down the Punisher and everything like that. So, okay, so we're moving on from the guy who's recently his other partner. What happened with him? And then we always get, as we end almost seems every issue, this serial killer preacher,
right? Who feels like he's finding like a kindred spirit. It almost seems like with the Punisher. He's like, I'm alone no longer, or something like that. And I am looking forward to that inevitable confrontation.
Yeah, he's got some issues.
He does.
He's got issues. So, but all right. Well, next week we will get into issue number 5, and all right, volume 184 in the books. First episode of Loki. Excited about episode 2. So, As always, want to thank our official sponsor, GettingPriceBooks.com. Use that code MarvelGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. Brent, tell people how they can follow you.
Brentech Prime on your social media platform of choice, pretty much.
Excellent. And you can follow me on Twitter and most social medias at Chris Balga. You can follow this podcast on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, at Marvel A Podcast. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GWAPod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback. DMs are open. Ask questions. Continue to rate and review the podcast on Marvel Alliance solo feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us live in the chat. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. It is time to do our post credits, and as we mentioned at the top of the show, another Disney Plus show ended, and that would be Ahsoka.
Yeah, and of course you should go watch or listen to Star Wars Alliance for the full reviews of Ahsoka. But let's just give a couple brief thoughts. On the whole, looking at the overall thing, I loved it. I thought this was great. We I was at my kid's school today, and I was chatting with the principal, and we were talking about Star Wars because he has some Star Wars stickers. And I asked him if he'd watched Ahsoka. He said not yet because he kind of wanted to watch Rebels first, and he's only seen part of Rebels. I'm like, okay, that's fair. And I think you'll enjoy it more if you do watch Rebels. So since you're willing to do that, you should roll with that. But I also told him, like, we talked a little bit about Andor, Mando, things like that. And I was like, Andor, I think, is the best. Mando is still like my favorite character, but like this one, Ahsoka to me felt like the most Star Warsy, like of all the shows. And I don't know if that's just because of all the lightsabers or the Force or what, but it just felt super Star Warsy, and I was here for it for 6 weeks. I love this show.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. Like I said before, Ahsoka Tano's my favorite character in Star Wars. Love the animated series from Clone Wars, her portrayal in Rebels, to now Rosario Dawson taking on the character. Again, I understand people can show's called Ahsoka, but it
could have been called Rebels season 5.
It could have been Rebels season 5.
It could have been.
But what was good about, like, I think a lot of the characters they had their moments. You had growth moments with every one of the characters. You had journey moments in there. Ahsoka finally has shaken off her fears, the problems she's had, prior to when we saw Mando, post when we saw Mando, the questions answered about her and Sabine, and then getting Ezra back. I mean, I really enjoyed this show. It is not my favorite. Like you said, Andor is definitely up on the top of my list for best Star Wars shows, but it was so satisfying. I think it was a very satisfying show. I think Rosario Dawson has done complete justice to the character that Ashley Eckstein has brought to life in her voice, has done honor to the character, and the rest of the cast, Mary Elizabeth Winstead with Hera.
So good.
Good. Very good. I can't remember the actress's name who played Sabine, but she was great. The actor who's taken over the role of Ezra. I mean, they got the characters right. They really, really did. And I think that's what I appreciated being a fan so much of Rebels. They did a great job. And Ray Stevenson as Balin, yeah, he was a surprise in the sense of he didn't become a mustache twirly villain. And I'm only sad that if we are given, and I hope we are given, a season 2 of this show, it is a major, to say the least, major disappointment that he will not continue as Balin, because the way they left it off, it seems like, okay, Balin has to return.
Hey, and I know it's still up in the air about there even being a season 2. Like, there were references to a series finale. I thought I saw on Disney Plus it said season finale, but now I'm questioning that.
It said season finale. I did see it say season finale.
I will say this. I firmly believe, obviously, we're going to see these characters again, probably in the Filoni movie, right? But
I think that's way too long to wait, though.
I agree. I really hope there is a season two first. Frankly, when the movie comes around, I don't want to be watching Ahsoka get off that planet. Okay, Ahsoka and Sabine get off that planet. I want
Yeah.
them to do that in a. I want to see it. I just want to see it in another show. That way,
Mhm.
when we get to the movie, we can just get to
A-
the final stuff there.
And what did you think about Thrawn?
So when he first in that first appearance he had, which was I don't know whatever episode that was, I went back and I watched a clip of Rebels
Mhm.
because I understand we have the same actor at play here,
Mhm.
and I wanted to compare the voices, and it is a little different. It was definitely still him. There was an intimidation factor that the character had on Rebels that I felt like he was missing in that first appearance back in this. Now, I felt it more later, especially in the final episode. And so it may have just been him having to step back into the role and like recapture that headspace. But there was just something about him in Rebels that I found more intimidating as a character, more imposing as a character than I thought we were getting when he first showed up here. That said, I'm glad they kept the same actor. When it can work, I'm glad they went with it. And I really did enjoy his appearance. I think he's a really cool Star Wars villain,
Mhm.
and it was cool to see him make the jump into live action.
Yeah, I love Lars Mikkelsen at his voice in Thrawn and in Rebels. Very good. I thought I thought it was okay. I have a very long history in the sense of seeing Thrawn through the Timothy Zahn trilogy, and reading, still dabbling into the Thrawn books at that point.
There's a comic series that's really good with him.
Yes, and so I have a certain expectation for Thrawn, and I know that we had to get to finally see some. So my hope, I'm okay with it. I need to see more, and I think Lars needs to be given a little bit more to work with in the sense of growing this threat in live action. We have seen it in comics, we've seen it in books, we've seen it in animation. He's not there yet to be imposing as he is. We've come to see him in Legends and now in canon.
Yeah, pretty much.
So at least in this show, but I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to hopefully a season 2. But yeah, so those are our high level thoughts. Check out Star Wars Alliance for the full breakdown of that final episode. They did a great job over there. So, but we will see you next week, Friday night, to go look over Loki episode 2. Have a good weekend, everyone. See you next week. Bye bye.